Gopichana Vallabha Girivardhari Shodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Vihari Jaya Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parvajakacharya Astar Sata Sri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai ISKCON Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Gaura Premananda. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga. Glories to Srila Prabhupada. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 8, Prayers by Queen Kunti and Parikshit saved. Text 40. Ime Janapada Sridaha Supakvaushadi Virudha Vanadri Nadyudanvato Hyadante Tava Vikshitahai Ime Jana Padasridha Supakvaushadi Virudha Vanadri Nadyudvadanto Hyadante Tava Vikshitahai Ime Jana Padasridha Supakvaushadi Virudaha Vanadri Nadyudanvanto Hyedante Tava Vikshitahai Ime Jana Padasvidha Supakvaushadi Virudaha Vanadri Nadyudanvanto Hyedante Tava Vikshitahai Jana Padasvidha Supakvaushadi Virudha Vanadri Nadyudanvanto Hyedante Vikshitahai Jana Padasvidha Asasadi Virudha Vanadri Nadyudanvanto Yedante tava vikshitai. Adrinadudanvanto. Mejana padasrida. Adrinadudanvanto. Yedante tava vikshitai. Vaishnavis. Ejana padasridha. Viruddha. Anadrinadyudanvanto. Yedante tava vikshitai. Imejana padasridha. Supakvaushadi viruddha. Navinavidanvanto. Ime, all these, Janapadaha, cities and towns, Sridaha, flourished, Supakva, nature, Aushadi, herbs, Virudaha, vegetables, Vana, forests, Adri, hills, Nadi, rivers, Udanvataha, seas. He, certainly, Edante, increasing, Tava, by you, Vikshitahai, seen. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Translation. All these cities and villages are flourishing in all respects because the herbs and grains are in abundance, the trees are full of fruits, the rivers are flowing, the hills are full of minerals, and the oceans full of wealth. And this is all due to your glancing over them. Purport. Human prosperity flourishes by natural gifts and not by gigantic industrial enterprises. The gigantic industrial enterprises are products of a godless civilization, and they cause the destruction of the noble aims of human life. The more we go on increasing such troublesome industries to squeeze out the vital energy of the human being, the more there will be unrest and dissatisfaction of the people in general, although a few only can live lavishly by exploitation. The natural gifts, such as grains and vegetables, fruits, rivers, the hills of jewels and minerals, and the seas full of pearls, are supplied by the order of the Supreme, and as He desires, material nature produces them in abundance or restricts them at times. The natural law is that the human being may take advantage of these godly gifts by nature and satisfactorily flourish on them without being captivated by the exploitative motive of lording it over material nature. The more we attempt to exploit material nature according to our whims of enjoyment, the more we shall become entrapped by the reactions of such exploitative attempts. If we have sufficient grains, fruits, vegetables, and herbs, then what is the necessity of running a slaughterhouse and killing poor animals? A man need not kill an animal if he has sufficient grains and vegetables to eat. The flow of river waters fertilizes the fields, and there is more than what we need. Minerals are produced in the hills and the jewels in the ocean. If human civilization has sufficient grains, minerals, jewels, water, milk, etc., then why should it hanker after terrible industrial enterprises at the cost of the labor of some unfortunate men? But all these natural gifts are dependent on the mercy of the Lord. What we need, therefore, is to be obedient to the laws of the Lord and achieve the perfection of human life by devotional service. The indications by Kunti Devi are just to the point. She desires that God's mercy be bestowed upon them so that natural prosperity be maintained by His grace. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasari Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. So this is a very famous purport by Srila Prabhupada. It's very revolutionary. I could remember the first time I read this. I had gotten a copy of Bhagavad Gita from some devotees at a Grateful Dead concert in 1973 sometime. And I read the book, and I had seen in the front of the book, if you're interested in the subject matter of this book, then write to the secretary of the Bhaktivedanta Book Trust in Los Angeles. So I did that. I didn't know about temples, but they sent me a catalog, and I ordered more books and taped lectures of Srila Prabhupada. And one of the books I got was the first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, first volume. And I can remember reading these things because and seeing just how revolutionary they were, because I had been raised as an American citizen, and we were taught that the real advancement of civilization is based on increasing the industrial enterprises. You know, if we can increase that kind of economic activity, that's actual success. And, you know, people who are living, you know, on more close to nature, they're primitive. And we wouldn't want to live like that. So it was very revolutionary to read things like this. They just smashed through all the misconceptions that, you know, our modern life in the Kali Yuga seems to be based upon. You know, Srila Prabhupada says, the gigantic industrial enterprises are products of a godless civilization, and they cause the destruction of the noble aims of human life. So, what is the actual aim of human life? The actual aim of human life is described in the Vedanta Sutra, Atato Brahma Jigyasa. Now is the time to inquire about the absolute truth. You know, there are 8.4 million different kinds of bodies made available to conditioned souls in the material world. And why are the conditioned souls in the material world? Because they're not fit to exist on the spiritual level of reality, which is beyond this material world. You know, this material world is characterized by different miseries. Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadhi, Dukkha, Dosh, Anudarshanam. An intelligent person will see that everyone in the material world is subject to the miseries of birth, death, old age, and disease. But by nature, we are not meant to be in this condition. We are meant to be somewhere else. Lord Chaitanya explains, Jivara Sarupa Hoy Krishnara Nitya Das. The eternal nature of the soul is to serve Krishna on the spiritual level of reality. And Lord Krishna explains in the Bhagavad Gita, Mamai Vamso Jiva Loke Jiva Bhuta Sanatana. The soul is eternally part of me. So we have a spiritual nature. And just like Krishna is Sat Chit Ananda Vigraha, the nature of the soul is also Sat Chit Ananda. Sat means it's eternal. Chit means it's full of knowledge. Ananda means it's full of ever-increasing spiritual pleasure, which is enjoyed by the spirit soul when it's in its constitutional position of service to Krishna, the source of all conscious beings. So we're not in that position now, and why is that? It's because of misuse of our free will. That's part of our spiritual nature, that we have free will. Krishna Bahir Mukahana Boga Vanchakare Nikatashtamaya Tare Japatiya Tare. So that means Krishna Bahir Mukha means we turn our face from Krishna. Why? Boga Vanchakare, because we want to be independent enjoyers. And then what happens? Nikatashtamaya Tare. Near Krishna, when we turn from Krishna, Maya is there to greet us and entangle us in the material energy. So that is why we find ourselves in the material world. And once we're here, we have two choices we can make. We can try to return to our original position of service to Krishna and make ourselves fit to enter the spiritual world, to enter Krishna's eternal spiritual pastimes as one of his eternal associates. Or we can become more and more deeply entangled in trying to dominate, control, and exploit the material energy, along with others who are trying to do the same thing. So those who are trying to return to their original position, they will want to live in the most simple, natural way possible, relying on the resources of nature, while putting most of their energy into developing the resource of consciousness, trying to restore consciousness to its original pure state, which is Krishna consciousness. On the other hand, those who want to become more and more deeply entangled in the material world, they will try to dominate, control, and exploit material nature in competition with each other. They form competing groups, and they try to develop these gigantic industrial enterprises. Those who want to return to their original nature, they try to remember Krishna at every moment. Those who are intent upon being independent enjoyers of the material energy, they try to forget Krishna at every moment. Even if they believe in God, they simply pray to God, help us make more of these gigantic industrial enterprises. Help us to produce and consume more and more material things. So there's, in one sense, very little difference between an atheist or a materialist who believes in God. Their activities are basically, the same. So Krishna explains this mentality in the 16th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, the divine and the demoniac natures. The demoniac natures described as asatyam apratishtam te jagat ahur anishvaram. They think there is no God in control. Even if there is some God somewhere, we can explain everything without him. We can do completely without him. He may be there somewhere, or he may not even exist at all, but we don't have anything to do with him. We are just meant to dominate, control, and exploit the material energy as to the maximum extent possible. And Lord Krishna describes the result of that in that 16th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. He says they will create horrible things meant to destroy the world. And that may include things like atomic bombs and chemical weapons and biological weapons and so many other things. But it also includes these gigantic industrial enterprises, which are poisoning the air, poisoning the land, poisoning the water, poisoning all the natural resources that Krishna has provided. So those who are on the path back home, back to Godhead, we may at the present moment be entangled with these things. But if we see, Srila Prabhupada's vision, he promoted the idea of simple living and high thinking. So part of his program for making the world Krishna conscious included establishing communities that were based on this principle of simple living, simply taking advantage of the resources that Krishna is providing in a more natural way. But at the same time, for preaching purposes, he was prepared to make use of the products of the gigantic industrial enterprises for the purpose of spreading Krishna consciousness in the world. But the ultimate goal with the spreading of the Krishna consciousness movement would be to move to a more simple, natural way of life, organized on the principles of Varna and Ashrama, not ordinary Varna and Ashrama, but Daiva Varnashrama, which is meant to encourage people to put most of their energy into developing their consciousness to its original pure state, Krishna consciousness. So that means having a particular attitude towards nature. Ishyavasyamidam sarvam yat kincha jagatam jagat tena taktena bunjita magrita kasyas svidanam. It's stated in the Isa Upanishad. One should see everything as the property of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and one should take only one's quota. Like if somebody comes to visit your house as a guest, and then they start ransacking the whole place, thinking everything belongs to them. Whatever money they find, whatever food they find, they take it. You would be thinking, what's wrong with this person? Doesn't he understand where he is? But no, a proper guest will understand, I'm a guest here. This is not my property. This belongs to somebody else. And I'll take whatever is set aside, granted to me as my quota. But in the world today, people don't think like that. They don't see that these resources belong to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that everyone has their assigned quota that they're entitled to, and that they should just accept that. It'd be like, if you have, they have so-called International Space Station, where they have astronauts from different countries. What if instead of just understanding they're on a mission up there and everything has been provided for them, food and water and oxygen to breathe, but they're there for a mission. And what if they started fighting with each other for control of the oxygen and the food, and started shooting each other up? It would be total chaos. So more or less we're in the same position. We've been placed on this planet, in this universe, for a purpose. And the real purpose is to live in such a way that we can satisfy our material needs in the most simple, natural, and efficient way possible, while putting most of our human energy into developing our consciousness to restore it to its original state of Krishna consciousness. That's what should be happening in the world. But instead of that, most people are under the influence of the idea that we are independent enjoyers of the material resources, and it's our business to produce and consume as much as possible in competing groups. If other groups of nations or others seem to be getting more than their fair share, then we have to get our fair share. So there are wars over the control of these material resources, and even in ordinary life, Srila Prabhupada is mentioning, only a few really get the results of these gigantic industrial enterprises. So all over the world, people are concerned with growing inequalities in wealth. But it's just a natural result of this kind of system, that Srila Prabhupada is describing here. So Queen Kunti, in her prayer here, is mentioning that she's seeing that this natural prosperity that is there is all due to Krishna's glancing over the material resources. In other words, she's recognizing that everything is ultimately under Krishna's control, and it is by Krishna's mercy that we can sustain ourselves in this world while trying to make progress and going back home, back to Godhead. Okay, I'll stop there. Anybody have any comments or questions? Ranga Prema? Okay. Oh, you had a question or comment?
Okay.
Or correction?
Yeah, it's okay. First of all, thank you very much for a very elucidating class, making very interesting points on why we're here, what the purpose of life is, why we're miserable, and how to be free of it. Thank you. My question is this, is that it is mentioned over and over again that in the material world, persons are experiencing much, much pleasure. In fact, that's what motivates them to go on. If they didn't have any pleasure, they'd probably just commit suicide. But there's some kind of pleasure there which creates a taste which propels them forward to continue. So people in the material world are getting pleasures, okay? And then there's persons in the spiritual world who, as you mentioned, are experiencing peace and bliss and the sense of an eternal knowledge. And they're also gaining pleasure. They're also happy there. So a person may ask who's in the material world if they're happy in their activities, which is service, and we're happy in our activities, service, then why strive for something else? What more can I gain in that other kind of happiness, that what you call spiritual happiness, that I cannot gain down here? What's the difference and what's the benefits?
It's not something that's really logical or reasonable. Sometimes people make decisions that aren't really in their best self-interest because they have the free will and they think there is something better. The example that Srila Prabhupada would give is that sometimes there's an employee of a company who's nicely situated, but they think that by taking control of the company, becoming the boss themselves, they'd be able to enjoy even on a higher level. It's it's not really something that's rational and logical. It's a kind of craziness. It's a kind of craziness. And it has to be reformed. So Krishna, although they can't ever have that position, Krishna gives them a position where they can try to do that. And, the example is given that sometimes a child wants to have the moon, possess the moon. There's no way the child can actually possess the moon. It wants to. So the mother will give the child a mirror, and the child can see the reflection of the moon in the mirror that the child is holding in the hand, and the child thinks, okay, now I've got the moon in my hand. So the idea that we can be an independent enjoyer is something like that. You can't attain that position. It's impossible. But Krishna gives us the opportunity to think we are independent enjoyers, and gives us the opportunity to try to do that. It's not something that's ultimately reasonable or logical or rational, but we think that it's possible, therefore Krishna gives the opportunity. And different devotees have different ideas about where we make this decision. And ultimately it doesn't matter where it's made, but we make this decision, and therefore at the present moment we're not fit to exist on the spiritual level of reality with Krishna as one of his eternal associates. So whatever we think about it, we should be qualifying ourselves to enter Krishna's Nitya Leela. Gauranga Prema.
Thank you, Prabhu, for the wonderful class. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada, he's saying that the jewelries are coming from the sea. I'm just wondering, what are those jewelries from the sea? Can you just give some examples, Prabhu?
Well, he mentions pearls specifically. So I would give that as one example. There may be others as well. The only way I would know would be to find some other statements. Does anybody else know of jewels that come from the sea? Coral. Okay, that's another one. Yeah. Yeah, but pearls, definitely. Okay. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Thank you, Prabhu.